Okay, Mark meets Andrew McGuinness, partner at BMB. Hi Andrew.
Hi Mark.
Before we go into a summary of your career, what does it mean to be the M in BMB?
Gosh, some days good, some days bad, I guess. It's been brilliant. I mean, we're now 8-year-old business, and before that I was running TBWA, Chief Executive TBWA, and it's just been really good. It's been really fun. I mean, you know, we've had our challenges and ups and downs, but many more ups than downs. And you feel like you've made something, you've created something, more than just working for someone, I guess. And I'm really proud of the culture we've created, really.
So where was your first job?
First job was at JWT.
What year was this roughly?
1842. It was 1993, I think, 92, 93. So I got a job there as a graduate. I was a late graduate. I'd worked in direct marketing for a year, not really knowing what direct marketing was before I went travelling. Then went to university, started at JWT, grad at JWT, the only one who wasn't an Oxbridge, and probably the only one who didn't have a trust fund at JWT at that time. Worked there for 4 or 5 years, and then moved to Sydney to work at MSC Saatchi in Sydney, which I did for kind of largely lifestyle reasons really, but it turned out to be the best thing for my career. I kind of thought it would be career neutral, but it was actually fantastic for my career, and worked my way up to Group Account Director at MSC Saatchi, and that was a brilliant time for that business in Sydney. Grew loads, so I was pitching loads and just got to know something about the business as well as, you know, the running of a business, I guess, rather than just running a business for clients. Then came back to TBWA and joined there as a managing partner. Got promoted to an MD very quickly, very luckily. People left. Actually, Johnny Hornby and Simon Clemmer went off to set up CHI, so I got promoted to BMD. And then my boss left after 12 months and I got promoted to be CEO, so I was only 32 when I landed that job, so I had a lot of lucky breaks really.
Fine, and then how did you decide it was the right time to set up your own agency?
It was hard to know the right time, I guess, but I think there's a thing within you, if you want to do it, there's a thing that keeps growing and growing and growing, and I suppose it gets to a point where you've got to act upon it.
So you still had that hunger and that drive to want to take ownership of your own thing?
Oh, very much so. I mean, that had kind of always been there, and I didn't know whether that would be in advertising, but I always thought I'd run a business of some kind. Trev and I spoke about it. Trev actually approached me about it. I hadn't particularly had it in my mind at that point. And then we started building the plans from there. So yeah, and you know, not really looked back since then. It's a big leap to make, but you know, I'm very glad that we made it.
It's quite unusual these days for an agency to contain the initials or the surnames of the people that run the agency. There are a lot of crazy and silly named agencies. Do you have any thought about that? Were you guys going to be called something else, or were you always going to be called BMB?
No, to be honest, initially we didn't want to use our initials. We wanted to come up with a name that wasn't our names. We didn't feel any great urge to have our names over the door. We just singularly failed to come up with something that we didn't think was crap. We had all sorts of ideas, and I'm not going to say what they were. But we weren't really happy with any of them, and so ultimately we resorted back to our names. And I think it's been a good thing. I think particularly, you know, I think Trev's got such a great name in the industry. I think that's been useful to us, and you know, I think the name's kind of built. And but it wasn't a kind of really deliberate thing of setting out to do that against the tide of kind of wacky names. But it's hard to get a name that's memorable but not wacky, you know. And I think actually one of the few, I mean, I think Mother's done it, although it was seemed wacky at the time and doesn't seem wacky now, yeah, as is often with brand names. I think actually latterly Adam and Eve is a great name actually. I think that they did a great job with that name, but many others kind of struggle, and it's a bit try hard, and so we in the end opted not to do that.
What's the best account that you've had the pleasure of working on?
Cool. I mean, we've worked on lots of great stuff. I would say consistently over a long period of time now, McCain would probably be that account. We worked with McCain at TBWA. They joined us a year after we'd started BMB, and they've just been a brilliant client, brilliant work, lovely people. We know their business intimately, they know our business, and we've kind of grown together, and they've just been fantastic for us.
And what are the perks of having, what are the food perks of having McCain as a...
As many chips as you can eat, yeah. That's how you keep lardy. Although McCain chips are obviously only 5% fat, so they're just a really. I mean, I think at the heart of it is they are a really nice bunch of people. They're ambitious for their business. It's still a privately owned, family-run or family-owned business. They've got strong values, and they really believe in the power of marketing communications, and that's been great for us.
What's been the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you in your career so far?
The most embarrassing by some measure was at JWT, as a relatively new grad at JWT. JWT used to have a car park underneath it in Berkeley Square. This is when they were in Berkeley Square. And underneath all the directors and the kind of posh people had their cars there, and the system was so that people could move cars around, the car keys were kept underneath the visor of the cars. So I'd been told to go down, and actually I was picking up one of the other directors from their second home in Oxfordshire, as you do if you work at JWT. So I was the grad picking up their car, picking them up on the way to see Kraft in Cheltenham. And for some reason their car was in for service, so it was a rental car. So I went down, got this car, got this BMW, whatever it was, driving along, got to Oxfordshire, picked up the person I was picking up, and she was a mischievous person, was kind of looking through this hire car and looking at what was in the glove compartment and here and there and the other. And as she did so, discovered more and more personal effects in this hire car. It's like, it's a bit strange. Anyway, we had the meeting in Kraft, we're driving back and we get word that I had effectively nicked someone's car from that car park. The hire car was still down there, but someone had come down after work to discover that their car wasn't there anymore. And the police had been alerted, and we were basically driving this hot car back from Cheltenham across the Cotswolds. So that was a little bit embarrassing, I would say.
That's one of the best stories.
It's a very JWT story though as well. All the kind of directors' car parks and second homes in Oxfordshire. But yeah, it was not ideal, that one.
What would you say the main changes are or have been in the ad industry since you first entered to now?
Massive changes. I think it's been overall massive changes for the better. I think we've become much more commercially minded as a business, and I think that's been great. I think we have to make sure that doesn't drown our reason for being, which is about creativity. I think
before you guys were commercially minded, what were you?
I think there were. I mean, certainly growing up at JWT, you didn't really concern yourself with the commerce of it. Whether that be the commerce of the agency or the commerce for the client, you were developing ideas that you thought were good ideas for that client, and to a certain extent that spirit is important, because you then are, in a way that's how creativity can flourish. It's some people having a slight distance from what they're trying to do and the latitude to kind of think the unthinkable. But I think it was too far that way, and I think the big change over the last X number of years, lots of years now, has been that there's an understanding that creativity is really crucial, but it's creativity with a purpose, with a commercial purpose. I think over the last few years we're in danger as an industry of tipping it too far the other way, where in a way the short-term commercial imperative is meaning that the creativity just isn't really there, and then bizarrely then it doesn't deliver the commercial results, and I think that's what we've got to watch out for.
Was there, when you were growing up, was there an agency that you particularly looked up to anywhere in the world and thought that's the place I'm going to...
Growing up? What do you mean in the industry?
In the industry, yeah.
Probably didn't think, even I wasn't sad enough to look at agencies when I was growing up.
But to be fair, you knew about M&C Saatchi in Australia, so...
Oh no, I knew industry, absolutely, yeah, and I thought you meant when I was a kid.
No.
Growing up, yeah, I mean, definitely, the absolute beacon when I was kind of starting in the industry was Howell Henry. And I still think there's loads of stuff. Howell Henry was a really radical business, it was a brilliant business, and it's such a shame in a way that it ended in the way that it did, and kind of went from the giddy heights of I think it was Agency of the Decade, named in 2000, and I don't think it existed by about 2002, 2003. Bloody amazing kind of demise, really, in such a short period of time. But they did all sorts of things that were quite radical. They structured their agency differently. They did, which now seems really commonplace, but they did open plan and hot desking from the beginning. They introduced the idea of tissue meetings, which weren't common at that point. They did a lot of things, and it resulted in a lot of good work. Actually, the work of Hal Henley was either absolutely glorious and fantastic and amazing, or utterly shite. There was not a lot in the middle, but it was a really a great agency, I think.
What advice would you give to people that are looking to enter the industry today, either as a creative or a suit, I guess?
I think it's tough, first of all. I think it's really tough.
Do you think it's harder these days than when you first?
Much harder at the moment. Yeah, I think at the moment it's really tough. I mean, I think, you know, being a 21-year-old graduate right now is really tough, you know.
But then entering JWT, where you were pretty much one of the few that weren't Oxbridge educated, that seems like a pretty tough.
Yeah, that was tough as well. I guess in a way I was lucky to get that break, and I made that case for myself and whatever, and that's what people have got to do now. So I guess in that way it's parallel. But I think the prevailing climate's hard for a 21-year-old. Lots of your mates won't have jobs, and you know, you're applying for all sorts of jobs and just not hearing back and all that sort of stuff. I think that's really, really hard, and we've got a responsibility to try and help those people, I think, as an industry. Advice, I think, is get in somewhere, you know, find your way, get some experience under your belt, get to kind of understand a little bit about the industry and the agencies within the industry, and then, you know, see where take it from there, and make it work from there.
What's your favourite ad campaign of all time?
Oh, there'll be a few, I think. It's funny, they probably do come from the time when you were kind of formative time. Is that going to work for you? That's fine. Sure. Bit of noise in the room next door. So I think Black Currant Tango, still I absolutely love Black Currant Tango. I think even things like BA Face, you know, these were ads as I was forming my ideas about what ads should be like. The ads were that were out there then. I think more recently I've loved the work that we did for Carling. I think it was absolutely fantastic, the Carling Mate stuff. I love the work that we did last year, for example, for Grolsch, which was a piece of kind of digital interactivity that allowed you to receive a live text from a video on screen, which was quite an incredible thing. So I think the way technology's moved on is great. The iPine that we did a few years ago, you know, I'm really chuffed with that. Fewer big ads now, I think, and I think that's something we maybe need to recapture as well, alongside all the digital stuff we're doing. Make sure we keep an eye on doing stuff that still really cuts through to people in the living room if they're sat back watching something, rather than a lot of stuff presumes that people are waiting or want to interact with you, which I don't think is always the case.
How does BMB sell itself in the market? Is it positioned as an creative ad agency? Or are there particular kind of mediums or areas that you guys would say you specialise in?
We said from the very beginning we are an ad agency. Again, partly because there are all sorts of... the language isn't very good to decide yourself as anything other than that, a communications agency, or there isn't really adequate language. I guess our case is that from a consumer point of view, everything that we dissect as a sector, so social media, DM, sales promotion, even logo and brand development. From a consumer point of view, they call all of that advertising. If the BBC does some new items, it's BBC does new ads and wastes however much money they want to write about it in the tabloids. Or, you know, if I get a magazine and I shake the leaflet out from the middle of it, to a consumer that's advertising. And in a way, I think, rather than obsess about the language, I think we've got to kind of, in a way, take the consumer view rather than our industry view, and also stop bloody complicating things and labelling things and dissecting things into ever smaller little compartments. Actually, what we're doing is using advertising. What we say is we use advertising, we use creativity to solve business problems, is what we want to be about as an industry. And the tool we use, from a consumer definition, is largely advertising. If it's something I interact with from a brand, that's advertising to a consumer, and that's all right. I think we've got a bit shy about the word, really.
If people were looking to work at BMB today,
Yeah.
what would they need to do to impress you guys?
I mean, depending on the discipline, I guess. But the common denominator would be that we would need them to be capable of thinking differently, of bringing some different thinking to their client, whether that be in account management or whether that be in planning. Actually, even whether that be in finance. Clients pay us to do stuff that they can't do for themselves, and again, I think we can lose sight of that. It's a really basic thing. We've got to bring something different to the party. If all we're doing is managing the logistics of a process, that's not good enough. So you've got to be able to have a degree of lateralism, a degree of creativity in the way that you think would be one of the most important things. I think the second most important thing probably is energy. We've got amazing opportunities now in our industry, but to make them happen takes a lot of energy. To persuade a client to do something that isn't a default takes a lot of energy. To get that great piece of work through takes a lot of energy. To build a business takes a lot of energy. So we need forces of energy. So people who have that ability to think laterally and who have the kind of, I guess, the chutzpah really to make that turn into something.
Okay, let's move on to a quick fire round.
Okay.
Can line or D&AD pencil?
Can line.
Olympic gold medal or an Oscar?
Oh, definitely an Oscar.
The brightest person you've worked with?
Oh, I'd say probably Trevor.
The most creative person you've worked with?
Oh, probably. I'd rather not have said him for both, but yeah, probably Trev.
And the best looking person you worked with?
Oh, I'm not going to get drawn on that one.
Creatives or suits?
Oh, it's got to be both, but I think if you can only have one, it's got to be creatives.
Money or happiness?
It's got to be happiness.
Apple or Android?
Well, controversial one, largely Apple, but we do a lot of work with Microsoft, so they're the nemesis.
Mobile's the winner. Degree or no degree?
We're open to either. We do a very specific non-grad scheme where people can apply if they haven't got a degree. So I think a degree is just a symbol of something, symbol of a certain level of attainment. You can symbolise that in other ways as well. Not doing very well on quickfire.
Facebook or Twitter?
Twitter.
Art directors or copywriters?
Irrelevant labels.
Retained work or pitch work?
Retained work or pitch work? Oh, I prefer retained work.
Web or mobile?
I think mobile.
Independent agencies or networked agencies?
Independent agencies.
Outsourced production or on-site production?
Both. Probably both.
Don Draper or Roger Sterling?
Oh, Don Draper.
And lastly, twist or stick?
Twist. Always twist.
Thank you very much.